Welcome to Real Talk with Heath Brady. Thanks for showing up. Good evening and good evening. I trust that you all have poured yourself a nice little cold beverage. I invite you to sit back, relax. Traditionally, there is so much joy and so much just a togetherness and you know, even if you don't celebrate Christmas, if you celebrate a different religious holiday or just the regular just hustle and bustle of this time of year, it's just always typically full of so much joy and excitement and togetherness. And you know, I'm not trying to jump on the bandwagon of 2020 has done us dirty, but there's some things going on in the world that are probably distracting you, as maybe they're distracting me from really being able to almost seamlessly focus on the joyous time of year that we normally would be experiencing together. I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer. My goal tonight is not to bring additional heartburn to the things that you or your loved ones or even myself are currently going through or struggling with or dealing with. But we're going to have real talk about some things. My goal is not to cause division. My goal is to help see different sides of things, different sides of topics, getting a better understanding of culture. And really, along those lines, really this is what we're getting at. We're going to take a look at events and things in our culture, and we're going to see, ultimately, what does Scripture possibly say to those things? What does Scripture possibly say is the prescription, if you will, for dealing with these things? I want you to know, if you've never listened to my stream before, if you have no idea who I am and this is your first time, I need you to know right out of the gate that I am a very much a born-again Christian. I love Jesus Christ with all my heart. I am very radically loud and proud about my faith. I don't apologize for it at all. And I'm passionate about theology, and not for the sense of trying to be a know-it-all, but from the sense that I want to be able to give an account for the joy that lies within me, as Scripture tells me. And so I hope that you can see and hear the way that I'm coming across that very thing, that first and foremost, Jesus is everything and the only thing to me. Outside of that, I love my wife, I love my kids, and there are just things in this world that are going on that are just rubbing me really, really raw. And so, not to continue having conversations about the obvious low-hanging fruit, but I want to have a conversation about this, what I like to call, or what I've decided to call, the Corona conundrum. I've had enough. I mean, I have absolutely had enough. I understand this virus is real. It's very real. It's so real that it's changed the course of history now for you and me, for our country, for the world, really. It's forced us to look at things and situations and people and each other in ways and means that we never really had to before. What's become the new normal is looking to see if someone's wearing a mask or checking to see how far apart the other person is keeping from me. You know, things like that. The conversation starters are no longer, hey, how's it going? It's, man, the coronavirus sucks. 2020 did us dirty. That's the conversation now. But I understand this thing is very, very real. But there's things that are going on in regards to this virus that have become quite the conundrum. And I'm really, really struggling to understand how serious are we supposed to be taking all of this. I take the coronavirus very, very seriously. I don't think any of us wants to get this. Especially if you've had it, you don't want anybody else to get this. You wouldn't wish this on your worst enemy if you've had it. I've said before, I'm not afraid of catching it. I'm afraid of catching it and giving it to someone else. And now, because of things that have been coming into light, especially recently, I think it really begs the question, how serious are we supposed to be taking this? Now, as I said, COVID's a real thing. It's a real thing. It's a real problem. I get that. And it doesn't play around. I was going through a personal study in the book of Proverbs. And I was going through the Proverbs with some guys. We were in Proverbs chapter 31. And most people remember Proverbs 31 for reasons other than this verse that I'm going to reference. This verse actually comes right before the big section on finding a godly wife. It's Proverbs 31, verses 8 and 9. I'm not going to touch on verse 8 tonight, but on chapter 31, verse 9, it says these words. It says, "Open your mouth, judge righteously, and defend the rights of the needy and the afflicted." And I have not stopped thinking about these two verses, but this verse in particular for tonight's live stream. I have not stopped thinking about that verse. It's been eating me alive for lots of reasons that I'm going to get into tonight. I believe that I have a responsibility as a Christian to do what this verse says, to open my mouth and to judge righteously and then defend the rights of the needy and the afflicted. So I'm going to attempt to do that tonight. So the first thing I want to do is I want to deal with the afflicted. Those who are afflicted. This virus has afflicted all of us in some way, whether we've caught it, whether someone's passed away from it, whether someone close to us has passed away from it, whether our friends and family have caught this, and then the ripple effects of the response to dealing with this virus. This has afflicted everyone in some way. We've shut down our schools for the purpose of safety and protection for the students, for the teachers and faculty, just the various educational workers and their families. The reason behind shutting down the schools was because they wanted to protect everyone, to help do their part of slowing the spread of this virus. March 2nd was the last day that my two youngest children set foot in a classroom here in Washington State. Just a couple of days ago, the governor of our state passed on information to the WEA, which is the Washington Education Association, basically telling them that, quote, the return and reentry plan into the classroom discussion is now off the table. In other words, the chances of our students setting foot back in school during this entire school year are almost zero now. They're not even going to talk about it. The school district in which my children are a product of has over 60% of its workers that would be labeled as high risk because of their age or pre-existing conditions. We all know what high risk means. So these decisions about what to do with the students and the schools and the school districts are all, we're being told that these decisions have been made and are continuing to be made for the safety and protection of our children and the faculty, etc. We've shut down all sorts of social functions, and depending on where you are watching this from, that looks a little different, but in a general sense, we have shut down dining, we have shut down movie theaters, we have shut down amusement parks, we have shut down now because we've got these spikes since Thanksgiving now. We have almost gone back to where we were at the very beginning of our response to COVID. Here in our state, depending on what county you live in, the rules are a little different for dining. Some restaurants can stay open but can only have 25%. Some restaurants can only have outdoor dining. Of course, it's December here in the Puget Sound area, especially in eastern Washington. It's really cold. So outside dining is kind of not going to happen. So a lot of restaurants, a lot of different businesses are shutting down. Movie theaters, just a few weeks ago, movie theaters were starting to reopen. I got all excited. Some of you guys who were listening to me way back in April, I think it was, when we were talking about the things that we're looking forward to most when this whole coronavirus thing is over, One of the things I'm looking forward to the most is going back to the movies. I got excited because the theaters were starting to reopen. Well, guess what? They're closed. Amusement parks. Well, we don't have any amusement parks here in the state of Washington. I think the closest amusement park to where I live is actually in Idaho, a place called Silverwood. And I apologize, I haven't been paying attention to what's happening in the state of Idaho, so I don't even know if Silverwood is open or closed. But of course, those of you who know me know what amusement park I think about the most, and that's Disneyland. Disneyland is still closed. There is no reopening plan for Disneyland. I don't want to rabbit trail and talk about that and how upset it makes me. But anyhow, we've done all of these things for the same reason, the safety and protection of everybody to help slow the spread of the coronavirus. It's too dangerous to do these things, is what we're being told. And in some places, we're being told that it's even too dangerous to do them outside. We're told that all of these things are for the sole benefit of protecting each other and keeping each other safe, okay? And I get that. All right. Businesses that cannot or will not comply to these mandates are being threatened with punishments of all various kinds, fines, litigation, you name it. And depending, again, like I said, depending on where you're watching this from, those rules, they vary in strength and enforcement. But the general sense is that these are the mandates and we're all supposed to toe the line or there's going to be some sort of consequence for it. And all of this is for the sake of slowing the spread of coronavirus and protecting people from potentially losing their life to coronavirus. Churches. That's a touchy one, especially for me. And we are probably going to unpack that topic next Sunday. So I'm not going to really pitch a tent on this item tonight, but I will tell you that at least here in the state of Washington, we are supposed to be at minimum capacity, which is 25% of our total capacity, and everyone is supposed to be wearing masks, and everyone is supposed to be socially distancing. And a couple of weeks ago, our governor said that he was not going to allow congregational singing in our church services. Again, all of this being for the safety and protection of each other and slowing the spread and infection of the coronavirus. And then, of course, there's masks. We're told we're supposed to wear masks everywhere. The grocery store, the mall, everywhere. We're even supposed to wear them outside. And they go back and forth on that as far as whether it's simply to make you feel better or if it's for making everybody else around you feel better. There's kind of this ebb and flow of peer pressure about the masks and outside and all that stuff. But the general consensus is, you leave your house, you bring your mask, and you wear it every time you get out of the car, no matter where you are. And in the area where I live, I have to say that there's a lot of compliance. It's actually kind of impressive. Just today, I went for a drive, and it was crazy. Actually, it was yesterday. I went for a drive around the neighborhood, and it just was crazy to me how many people were, not only how many people were out and about, but how many of them were actually wearing their masks. It was actually comforting to see, to be honest with you. For those of you who don't know, the Pacific Northwest, especially the Puget Sound area where I live, has been blessed the last several days with some really beautiful sunny weather. Even though it's been cold, it's just been really nice. Kind of like the low 40s during the day, low 40s to low 50s in there. And so people have just been out and about and doing their thing. But anyhow, so the masks, right? Here's the thing. We've been told to trust the science. We voted for science. And I'm not going to talk about politics or the election. Not going to go there tonight. But we were told to trust the science. We were told to vote for science. We were told to believe in the science. And there's so many of these precautions, in my opinion, that do make sense, at least on the surface. But how serious are we supposed to take them? So let's shift gears. Let's talk about the needy. Scripture says to judge righteously and defend the rights of the needy and the afflicted. So I've talked about how we've been afflicted. Let's talk about the needy. What does that look like? Well, before I get into that, let me tell you about another verse. It's in Psalm 146, verse 3. And it says, "Do not trust in princes, in mortal man, in whom there is no salvation." Now, at the risk of getting sermonitis and picking that verse apart for you, I'll just kind of go through some things, and maybe you'll catch my drift by the time I get to the end of this list of things. I want to talk about some of the fallout from all of these things that we've done to slow the spread. So first of all, depression, mental illness, alcoholism and chemical dependency, suicide, domestic violence, including pets, all skyrocketing. People are losing their mind from being in quarantine, from not being able to be with others, including families at the holidays. And now they're talking about canceling Christmas because it's a super spreader event. This is supposed to be the happiest time of the year. This is supposed to be the time where we all get together, no matter what corner of the earth you come from. This is the time of the year where here, at least in the United States of America and some other countries in Europe, we celebrate Christmas. We celebrate something during the month of December. It's supposed to be joyful. We're supposed to have community. But we're all being separated. And again, it's for the sake of protecting one another from contracting this virus and slowing the spread. But all of these consequences of all of this separation are manifesting themselves in the skyrocketing rise in percentages of depression, mental illness, alcoholism, drug addictions and abuse, suicide, domestic violence, all of this stuff. So how have these princes, how have these publicly elected officials, how have these leaders that we trust in, how have they reacted? Well, we're closing everything down for safety. I know that in the state of California, they have closed all dining, even dining outside in certain counties. In LA County, they have closed all dining, indoor and outdoor. And just yesterday, if any of you follow my personal Twitter, you would have seen a post that you would have seen a tweet that I shared about a Los Angeles County bar owner that was told by the governor that they have to cease and desist from doing business because their outdoor patio was deemed unsafe because of COVID. So she complied, even though she obviously wasn't thrilled about this because this is her livelihood. She's owned and operated this business for years. And the only thing that was still bringing in income of any kind for herself and her employees was the outdoor dining experience, which she shows in the video what that whole setup looks like. And at least in Washington State, what she's doing would comply. It's great. It's social distancing. It's perfect. So she showed up to protest. She was helping to organize a protest about these different lockdown things. So she decided to go to her restaurant to pick up some things for the protest. And when she showed up, not more than 50 feet away from her restaurant was this massive outdoor dining tents setup because a movie company is filming on location there. So she's crying on this video about the hypocrisy. But again, we're closing down everything, right? We're closing down dining. This is the reaction that they have had to all of this stuff. They darn near canceled Thanksgiving. They told us, at least here in Washington State, that we were not allowed to celebrate a Thanksgiving meal in our homes with anyone who doesn't live in our homes, including family. So my adult children who don't live at home were technically not permitted to have Thanksgiving dinner in my home with me and my wife and our two youngest. And now they're talking about canceling Christmas too, because it's a super spreader event. However, you could technically still engage in dining in your own home with members of your family or whoever that don't live there. But there's certain steps you would have to take. And to be honest with you, the numbers and the length of time that you have to do all of this stuff is so confusing that I can't even repeat any of it to you because I can't even remember what they are. It's so confusing. It's like if you've been in quarantine for 14 days, then you can go, but if you haven't, then you need to get tested and you got to wait 4 days before anyway, it's just so confusing. But ultimately the idea behind it is they're supposed to be keeping us safe. They're supposed to be keeping us protected. And so they're going to shut down Thanksgiving and Christmas. But there's various forms of civil disobedience that are okay. We can have a protest, and we don't even have to wear a mask for that. We can have rallies, and we don't have to wear a mask for that either. We could have gotten together in a huge parking lot in droves and celebrated or wept together as a congregation over the results of the election. And we wouldn't have even had to wear masks for that either. And politicians, some of these politicians are getting caught left and right disobeying their own orders. And I'm sure if you even remotely hear a news report, you will hear stories of governors issuing orders and then being caught in restaurants. Lawmakers who have voted to cease outdoor dining, and then after voting, go have a meal in an outdoor setting at a restaurant. These type of things are happening all over the place, and the science keeps changing. Now, when they said to me, trust the science. We're supposed to trust the science. I understand that, and I'm going to tell you, science ain't my bag. I'm not a science guy. My brain doesn't work that way. I married someone who understands science. So it's kind of nice to have talks with my wife about stuff that I don't understand that has to do with science. Where do I get my science from? I'll be honest with you. My way of understanding science is watching the show Big Bang Theory. That's where I get my science from. But I will tell you, if there's one thing that I've learned about science, at least from that show, it's that science is always changing. And we're supposed to trust the science. And I get that. Why? Because science is real. It is real. And you know what? You know how I know it's real? Because God invented it. God invented science. And he created humankind, at least some of us, with the ability to understand it and unpack it for the rest of us to understand it. So I get that. So somebody, even though I've got a master's degree, somebody a lot smarter than I am, with a lot more of an intelligent degree, or at least 3 of them at the end of their name, is telling me trust the scientific data. Trust the numbers. I'm cool with that. Why? Because I'm a numbers and data kind of guy. But how many times since February have they flip-flopped? Masks don't do anything. Masks are what everybody should be wearing. Masks, it's just back and forth on the mask. Back and forth on social distancing. Back and forth. And again, I'm giving the scientists the benefit of the doubt. Why? Because this thing's new. COVID's new. And science is being tasked with the responsibility of not only understanding what this thing is, and not only understanding how it's transmitted, but now understanding how to create a vaccine for it, how to prevent the spread of it. So people a lot smarter than me, a lot smarter than I am, are telling me, trust the numbers and data that we give you. Can we at least agree on that? I think we all can agree that as scientists, we should be able to trust them, right? Because they're the scientists. Well, here's something interesting. And I don't know how much you all have been paying attention to what's going on in real time or in current events, but just a week ago, 1 week ago, the Dr. Anthony Fauci, you remember that guy that a lot of folks wanted Donald Trump's head on a pike for firing because he's the science guy? Anthony Fauci last Sunday, it was either Saturday or Sunday, said this: we need to open the schools and close the bars. And then he went on to say that there's no numbers or data to support or show that children are transmitting this disease to each other. There's no numbers and data to support it. In fact, not only is there no numbers and data to support that children pass this to each other, the numbers and data that do exist that say that children can transmit it to adults is so finite that it's not even worth being concerned about. Essentially, what he's saying is there is no reason at all why my children and your children should not be attending school in person. None. According to science, numbers, and data. That's the latest and greatest. So that's got me a little hot under the collar, obviously, because those things that I told you that are skyrocketing as an outcome of shutting everything down, the alcoholism and the chemical dependence, all of those things, you would be shocked to know how high of a percentage some of those things have spiked with children. It's so disturbing. Why? Because they're stuck at home all day long, staring at a computer screen with no social outlet anymore. Again, it's for the sake of protecting everybody and slowing the spread. I understand that. But as I said at the beginning, how serious are we supposed to be taking this? I'll do you one better. We're shutting everything down. We're keeping the kids out of school to slow the spread of the coronavirus. We're being told here in the state of Washington that we can't have a meal in our own dining rooms with more than 6 people who live in your household. Why are we playing professional sports then? Why is there 106 athletes on a football field playing football in one stadium, and there's 16 of those games going on every single week? And then there's the referees and the coaches, etc. Why is it okay for them, and some of those people, many of those people, the head coach of my very own Seahawks, they're all considered high risk if not for their age alone, but for other things. How many COVID scares have there been in the NFL alone this year? I'll have you know that my Seattle Seahawks are the only team in the NFL that has not, knock on wood, had a COVID scare. But be that as it may, do you understand how there's an imbalance of logic there, in my opinion? You've got young children, you've got children from preschool all the way up through 16 years old that have no numbers and data to support keeping them out of school, and yet we're keeping them out of school. And the older folks who get closer and closer to the at-risk age or circumstances are being allowed to interact in all of these other ways that high school kids aren't playing sports. High school kids aren't playing sports. Film crews, film and TV crews, film and TV shows and movies all over the country, all over the world. I thought, if you can't dine outside, even with a mask on, if you can't sit in a classroom, even with a mask on, how can you go and do all this stuff? It doesn't add up. What are we supposed to do? What are we supposed to believe? Who are we supposed to trust? Wherein lies our hope? Psalm 146:3. Do not put trust in princes. Do not put trust in mortal men. Why? Because in them there's no salvation. There's no rescue. That's what the word salvation means. There's no rescue. There's no ultimate rescue. by putting your faith and trust in your princes and in the wisdom of mankind. Technically, you shouldn't even trust me because I'm a flawed human being. But remember that verse at the top of the stream, Proverbs 31 verse 9, that to open your mouth and judge righteously and defend the rights of the needy and the afflicted. To judge righteously. If we are to judge righteously, if we are to figure out what the heck we're supposed to believe, who we're supposed to trust, what numbers and data and science we're supposed to follow, what actions are we supposed to take, what actions are absurd and ridiculous and unnecessary, if we are to righteously judge what to do, by what standard is righteous determined? According to that verse in Psalm 146, our publicly elected officials and the other leaders that we listen to, there's no rescue in them. So the standard can't be those people. The standard can't be that what the government says is righteous. Now, I'm not saying that the government doesn't help where it needs to help and that the government doesn't provide where it needs to provide. But what I am saying is that on this, they can't get it right. How do I know that? Psalm 146 verse 3 tells me not to put my trust in them because there's no ultimate rescue in them. So by what standard are we supposed to determine what exactly is righteous? Are we supposed to follow the example of our leaders? Well, they're breaking their own rules. Are we supposed to follow the guidance or examples of other humans? Well, everybody's fighting over this stuff. To mask or not to mask? That is the question. Well, there's another really interesting verse in the Bible. It's in the book of Micah, chapter 6, verse 8. And it says, "He has told you, O man, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you but to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God?" Here's the bottom line. It's going to take humility for us to figure this out. That's the bottom line. It's going to take humility. We have got to stop being selfish, no matter where we are. No matter who we are, whether you're a Christian or not, humility is the answer to this. Humility is the barometer. Humility is the steering wheel that will point us in the right direction. We have to stop putting ourselves first. We have to think about each other. But ultimately, that verse in Micah says, we have to walk humbly with our God. Because without being humble before God, we aren't going to be able to do things justly. We aren't going to be able to be kind or love kindness. And we aren't going to fully understand what the Lord requires of us. We've got to be humble. It's going to take humility. Why? Because we can't all be right about this thing. And I swear, if I had a nickel for every post or tweet or comment where somebody thinks that they've cornered the market on who's right and who's wrong, or they're right and somebody else is wrong, I would be richer than the dreams of avarice. We can't all be right. And I would argue that to a certain degree, every single one of us is wrong. Why? Because the only way to really get this right is to start from the vantage point of humility and considering others better than ourselves. I do believe that as humans, we can make, generally speaking, we can make logical and smart choices. You know, wearing a mask is not the end of the world. Whether you agree or disagree with the science or the data about the masks, it's irrelevant. Why? Because it's a sign of good faith towards the other humans that are around you. It's telling the other folks around you, I don't know how you feel about this or not, but I'm going to put this mask on because if it's going to help protect you and everybody else around me, it's worth it. It's a minor inconvenience. And that's the way that I look at it. I used to be like, oh my gosh, wearing this mask just absolutely sucks. And it isn't because I've become desensitized. And it isn't because I've called this the new normal, because I haven't. There is nothing normal about this at all. It's because it's necessary. Social distancing. Do we do it or do we not? Well, regardless of where you land on that issue, can we not all at least agree better safe than sorry? And don't go invading other people's space, especially because, like, the science is always changing. We don't know the answers either. And I'm telling you right now, we don't want to be spreaders of this thing. We don't want to catch it. We don't want to give it to other people. Why? It's, again, from the vantage point of humility. Considering other people and their safety and their security more important than our very own. Especially because of those who are actually the high-risk people. And I'm not going to unpack that part of this conversation tonight either. But I will say this. I am really getting burnt out on the conversation of this could be your last Christmas with grandma. This could be your last birthday with grandpa. This could be your last celebration of such and such with so and so. Why don't we just end the conversation and do, from humility, the right thing, which is to look after one another by wearing a mask and keeping your distance from people, because they don't know where I've been and I don't know where they've been. It's that simple. But ultimately, the path that all of us need to be on. Ultimately, we have to make our peace with God. That is what salvation is. The ultimate form of rescue is being at peace with God. This is why in Psalm 146 verse 3, the psalmist writes that you shouldn't put your trust, do not, it's an emphatic, do not put your trust in princes. Do not put your trust in mortal men. Why? Because in them there is no salvation. In them there is no ultimate rescue. The only ultimate rescue is through Jesus Christ. We are saved by faith alone, in Jesus Christ alone, through grace alone. And that is the ultimate form of rescue and salvation. It's printed everywhere on our money. We've said it since the inception of our country. In God we trust. But do we really? Do we really trust God? Especially during the last 9 months, I hear all of these, oh, my thoughts and prayers are with you. Oh, my thoughts and prayers. Are they really? Do we really trust in God? Because, and I'm not just talking to Christians, I'm talking to everybody that's watching here. Everybody that's listening. We can't say that we are a nation of in God we trust unless we are actually putting our trust in God. We have to stop trusting in princes. We have to stop trusting in humanity. And ultimately, we have to put our faith and trust in God. If this thing is ever going to get better, if this thing is ever going to go away, if the conversation is ever going to change, we have to stop putting ourselves first. We have to think about others. The ultimate example of that was Christ and his death on the cross. In the book of Philippians, it says that Jesus Christ did not consider equality with God a thing that could be grasped, but he humbled himself and became a man and was put to death, even death on a cross. That's the ultimate form of humility. He considered even equality with God something that we could not grasp. And because he knew that as human beings we could not grasp the equality with God, he became like us and died in our place, providing that salvation. But here's the point that I want to make tonight. There is a thief in this life, and he is the devil. And Scripture says in John chapter 10, verse 10, that the devil, that thief, he seeks to only steal and kill and destroy. He is the one that is ultimately responsible for all of these horrible things that are happening as a result of the COVID conundrum. All of those things that are spiking, that are skyrocketing. He's responsible for that. People make the choice. He's the one that brings those choices. Why? Because he comes only to steal, kill, and destroy. What does he come to steal, kill, and destroy? Your quality of life. But that's not where the verse ends. That's not where the story ends. That sounds like bad news. It is bad news. But the good news is Jesus is the one that's saying that is giving these words, and he follows that statement up with that he came to give life so that we could have it, and not just have it, but have it abundantly. See, what's really, really cool is that even though COVID is real, and even though COVID sucks, and even though all of these horrible things are going on in the world as a result of COVID and all of the responses to COVID, that doesn't have to rob you of an abundant, joyful life. You can still have joy, and that joy is only found in Jesus. That's that salvation. So if we're going to have joyful times in December, if we're going to have joyful times around the dinner table at Christmas time, if we're going to be fighting this thing as a village and as a community and as neighbors and as brothers and sisters, as a nation, we have to get out of our own way. We have to stop being selfish. We have to stop putting our own feelings and our own agendas on display, and we have to take a step back and think about each other first. And next Sunday, come back for part 2 of how serious are we supposed to take this, because we will unpack this a little bit more next Sunday night. Thank you all so much for joining me tonight. Before I sign off, I want to remind you the name of the live stream is Real Talk with Heath Brady. You can follow me on all the socials on Facebook, Real Talk with Heath Brady, all one word. On Instagram, Real Talk with Heath Brady, all one word. On Twitter, Real Talk 8013. All that being said, I just want to say once again, thank you so much for tuning in tonight. I hope that you all have a blessed night. We'll be back again next Sunday, 7 p.m. Pacific time, right here on Real Talk with Heath Brady. Peace.